alone.
All right, Bill, we'll continue to check in with you throughout the afternoon. Bill Newley, our chief global correspondent, joining us from Helsinki, along with Jeff Bennett, who is there as well. We benefit now from the insights of Ambassador Michael McFaul. He is now an international affairs analyst for MSNBC. He is somebody who has met with President Putin many times. The first one of those meetings was back in 1991 in the mayor's office in St. Petersburg. He's written about what President Trump might expect, what that meeting might be like with the Russian president for the Washington Post. Ambassador McFaul is in Helsinki for us this afternoon. Ambassador McFaul, let me just ask you first of all about one element of your piece. You say Putin is extremely confident, some might say arrogant, in his views about international affairs. Before we get into what the interpersonal relationship might be like between these two men once the door closes, let me ask you about his grasp of the issues compared to those of the President of the United States, his command of international issues. He has been in this role mostly for the last 2 decades.
Yeah, 20 years. He's been doing this for a long time. This is his 4th president. He's met Clinton, Bush, and now President Trump. And all the issues that you've just been discussing, he's been working on for years. So he knows the details of Syria. He knows the details of Ukraine. By the way, he also knows the details of how to interfere in an American election. Whereas President Trump, he's only been at this for a year and a half. He does not know these details, and therefore that one-on-one meeting, I think, is rather dangerous for President Trump.
What is he like in person? As I said, you've been in the room with him. You've had meetings with him as well. You've watched others have meetings with him. What's he like in a meeting like this?
Well, I've been in about half a dozen summits or meetings like this one with President Putin and Prime Minister Putin, and I've seen different Putins. He can be very charming, he can be very gracious, but he can also be very stern and push back hard. I suspect we'll see the friendly Putin. That's what he wants, a good meeting, he wants a friendly meeting, and he wants everybody to forget about all the difficult, belligerent things that Russia has done. And so he will be reaching out, praising President Trump and hoping we'll all just forget about the past.
You describe him, Ambassador, as somebody who feels like he knows everything. He doesn't feel like he has to listen to his advisors, and those who observe this American president might see some resonance as they look at the U.S. president in contrast with the Russian president as well. He's not listening to Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, in the same way perhaps President Trump wasn't listening to or taking advice from Rex Tillerson, his first Secretary of State. Let's talk about the similarities in style of these two world leaders.
Well, that's a great point you raise, except the difference is one guy has been there for 20 years and the other guy's just been there for a year and a half. So remember that, you know, if you don't know if you don't know your writ, if you don't know the issues, you should listen to your advisors. But number two, there's going to be a bonding thing going on here, because the other thing you should know about President Putin, he's very blunt. He's even bragged about that when he first met with Barack Obama, President Obama. I was there in 2009, and he said, "I'm not as smooth as President Medvedev. I like to be blunt and straightforward." Well, that's the kind of language that President Trump brags about himself, that he likes to be a straightforward kind of guy. So I suspect stylistically they're also going to mesh.
I want to ask you about some comments the president made in an interview with Jeff Glor, the anchor of the CBS Evening News. The interview took place in Scotland, and the question that the anchor asked the president was, who is the biggest geopolitical foe right now? And let's take a listen to what the president had to say in... Forgive me, we don't have the sound for us right now, but he said the European Union. That was the first name that he mentioned. What did you make of that? I'll quote a tweet here from Donald Tusk, who's the president of the European Commission, and as a matter of explanation, that is the de facto head of the European Union. He tweeted today, "America and the EU are best friends. Whoever says we are foes is spreading fake news." Your reaction to the comments from the president? Yes, he mentioned Russia. Yes, he mentioned China, but the first 2 words out of his mouth were the European Union.
It's ridiculous. I'm sorry. There's no other word for it. I hate to be undiplomatic as a former diplomat. And it just goes to show what we were just talking about. He doesn't know his brief. He doesn't read what the talking points. There's no way that we can call the European Union a foe of the United States of America. That is not in America's national interest. Now, he did make some progress. You know, just 2 days ago, he was calling Russia a competitor. This time he called Russia a foe, but to put it in the same sentence with the European Union, I found deeply disappointing.
Ambassador McFaul, always great to speak with you. Thanks for being on the ground for us there in Helsinki. Ambassador Michael McFaul of Stanford University joining us this afternoon. And protests over tomorrow's meeting erupting in Helsinki, as Bill Neely described, before either of the